Chapter 10. Gabranth's Embrace. Gabranth was 35 years old and, until recently, had been very good at staying ahead of things. That was the skill that defined him, not just behind the wheel where he could push any four-wheeled machine to its absolute limit and read three corners ahead while doing it, but in life. He thought ahead, he calculated odds, he took risks, but only when the math made sense. He had parlayed a talent for statistics and an iron stomach into a comfortable existence. Gambling, investing, the occasional job that paid well enough relative to the risk. He owned several bolt holes across the city, most of them near highway on-ramps or tucked beneath overpasses because a man in his line of work needed exits. He didn't drink, bad for the reflexes, bad for the odds, and he didn't fight if he could drive or run instead. He was, by his own estimation, a practical man. Money was his religion. Risk management was his prayer. He had never believed in curses. That was before things started unraveling. Something had been going horribly wrong for some time now, and Gabranth often wondered how he'd ever let it happen. It was so unlike him to be careless, to take such risks, or to act in ways he never would have before. He was a man who always looked ahead. It was practically hardwired into him from years of racing. And yet somehow he failed to see any of this coming. Like the time he dropped in to see the fortune teller at Psychic Answers. She had been in Mountain View for nearly 30 years, though never in the same location for more than 6 months at a stretch. He'd known better than to be lured in by the $10 palm reading, and yet there he was, sitting across from a small dark-eyed woman with an old-world accent and the unhurried bearing of someone who had seen far more of the world than she let on. She spoke like someone out of a horror film. "The way you walk will be thorny, through no fault of your own, whether by curse or by destiny. The choices you make cannot help but be. Let me help you. I must obtain a special candle made only in a certain monastery in Montreal." He recognized her kind. Old world wanderers, people said, travelers from somewhere older and stranger than anywhere he'd been. They had a reputation for seeing things they shouldn't. He didn't believe in any of that. He didn't believe in superstition or fate, so he refused her demand for $3,000 for the so-called protection candle. He paid the $10 and left. He thought about her sometimes now, in his worst moments. But here he was, running for his life from small-time but eager criminals. He'd never had a cash flow problem before. Then suddenly, all of his accounts were compromised and emptied. Rather than deal with the FBI and the IRS, he'd chosen to disappear, using the little cash on hand to turn a quick profit. It failed. Desperate, he borrowed against the money he'd lost, through no fault of his own, and made a series of impulsive bets that led him straight to this moment. He was on the 101 South when he spotted them, 2 cars holding formation 2 vehicles back. Patient, professional enough to be dangerous, amateur enough to be unpredictable. He pushed the car harder, weaving through traffic with the fluid economy of someone who'd spent years reading movement at speed. He took 85 south, then looped hard onto westbound El Camino Real, cutting across 2 lanes with the kind of precision that briefly opened a gap between them. For a moment, just a moment, he thought he had them. Then the light at the intersection held him long enough, and they closed the distance. He made a hard right into the driveway of the Hotel Zico, drove through a break in the bushes, and parked among the trees along Stevens Creek Trail. Abandoning the car felt like a small defeat. On foot, he was ordinary. In a car, he was exceptional. He took off into the woods anyway because exceptional wasn't an option anymore. His cardio had never been impressive. Driving didn't exactly build endurance, and his lungs were burning within the first minute. He could hear shouting behind them, then whistles, then manic barking. They'd sick their dogs on him, too lazy to run themselves. The dogs were faster. He could hear them crashing through the underbrush, closing the gap with horrible efficiency. His legs gave out first. He tripped and went down face first into the earth, covered his head, and braced for the impact. It didn't come. Instead, a fierce growl tore through the air, followed by the sickening crunch of bone, a yelp cut brutally short. Another growl, deeper and more commanding, met the next dog's snarl, and that too fell silent. 3 seconds of absolute quiet followed. Then something charged, not toward him, but past him, straight at the thugs. "What the Run!" one cried. Another screamed as something heavy slammed him to the ground. He fell silent, then began moaning. Gabranth lay perfectly still, barely breathing. When the moaning stopped, he slowly rose to a crouch. A mist curled around the trees, then a voice, low, accented, fairly amused. "Gabranth, turn around, slowly." He barely had time to register the instruction before she was on him, a striking woman pinning him effortlessly to the ground. He looked up into the glowing red eyes and felt an unnatural calm settle over him, which was itself deeply unsettling. His brain, to its credit, managed one coherent observation. She was extraordinarily beautiful. To its discredit, that was approximately where coherent thought ended. "Yes, I know who you are," she said. "My name is Maleva. You've made quite a spectacle of yourself among the criminal element. They won't stop until you're dead." Everything Gabranth knew about vampires came from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. None of it seemed particularly useful right now. She buried her face in his neck instantly, every sense ignited, not sequentially, but all at once, merging into a cascade of ecstasy so overwhelming that time, space, and self dissolved into pure sensation. In that boundless instant, he glimpsed something vast and eternal before snapping back to reality like a rubber band pulled too far. Maleva was licking her lips, wiping her chin. "A kiss before dying," she murmured. Gabranth touched his neck, felt nothing. "What a shame," she continued. "You did so well for so long, then all at once, bad luck, worse decisions. Any fool can suffer misfortune. It takes someone special to compound it so spectacularly." She opened her mouth, revealing long animalistic fangs. Gabranth understood with eerie certainty that they held the key to his fate. And he welcomed them. He pulled her towards his neck and plunged again into synesthetic rapture, deeper and more intense than before. He soared beyond stars, beyond thought, only to be wrenched back as every wondrous sensation twisted into agony. Maleva stood over him. In one swift motion, she drove a wooden stake through his heart. Darkness swallowed him whole. The first sensation to return was taste, metallic, sharp iron. He licked his lips and slowly began to feel better. His eyes opened. He could see clearly in the dim light, which struck him as strange. He tried to move and found himself restrained to a bed. Maleva noticed his discomfort. That's for everyone's safety. Shocks are easier taken lying down. Drink this. It'll help. She placed a tube in his mouth connected to an IV stand. The bag was filled with blood. Under any other circumstances, he would have had objections. He drank. I had to stake you, she explained as the fluid flowed. I didn't want you to frenzy. Every time gangrel frenzy, we grow more beast-like in appearance, and that's inconvenient when you're trying to keep a low profile. She glanced at the nearly empty bag. This one's almost done. Let me hook up another. As she worked, Gabranth's mind cleared, though his certainty didn't return with it. Had he been drugged? Was he hallucinating? He ran the odds and couldn't make them out in favor of normal. Let me explain what happened, Maleva said, returning to his side. I killed you before those thugs could, drained you completely, then reanimated you with my blood. But I didn't have enough to sate the hunger that follows the embrace, so I staked you to prevent a frenzy and brought you here to feed you safely. You've had enough now. I'll remove the restraints. She undid the bindings. Better? You are now among the kindred, a vampire. There are many clans, each with unique gifts. We are gangrel, loners close to our inner beasts, capable of shape-shifting. The man and his dogs, killed by a mountain lion. That was me. I can become an animal, a mist, a bird, even sink into the earth to sleep, shielded from the sun. She paused. Yes, the sun is lethal. Avoid it. We belong to the Camarilla. They have rules. I don't care much for rules, but I follow them when they make sense. Besides, the Camarilla protects us from the Sabbat, the kindred equivalent of a death cult with an army. She checked the IV bag, empty. How about a little topper? Without waiting, she sliced open her wrist and offered it. The moment he drank, an orgasmic wave surged through him. Enough, she commanded, yanking her wrist away and sealing the wound with a lick. You'll have to learn how to feed without killing or even being noticed. We call it the kiss. It's meant to be pleasurable for both donor and drinker. Just remember to lick the wound shut afterwards. It heals quickly and leaves no trace. She gestured around the room. This will be your home now. Gabranth took in the small studio apartment, sparsely furnished but clean, tucked away in an unassuming building. Your car's been recovered and it's in the garage, Maleva added. We're giving it a facelift and new plates. You owe the Camarilla your immortality. Don't cross them. They've already claimed the life you lost. What remains belongs to them. A faint smile touched her lips. You now live at the apartments near the Scientology Center in Mountain View. You're on Easy Street. She let that land. Irony suits you. She studied him for a long moment, her red eyes glinting in the low light. Do you have any questions? Gabranth looked at her, at the red eyes, the faint smear of blood at the corner of her mouth, the easy confidence of someone who'd been alive for God knows how long, and his mind, newly sharpened and newly dead, produced exactly one question. Are you seeing anyone?